The sky was the color of old steel that morning, quiet and watchful. Evan sat by the airport window, his fingers tapping nervously against the armrest. He had always hated flying, but Faith had loved it. She would press her forehead against the window like a child, whispering about clouds like they were soft pillows. She wasn't with him at the gate yet. She was still in the restroom, fixing her hair the way she always did, slow, careful, like each strand held a secret. When she finally walked toward him, her white summer dress swayed like the wings of a dove. Her smile had that calmness that made his heart slow down. "Ready?" she asked. He wasn't, but he nodded anyway. They boarded the plane, row 17, seats A and B. He by the aisle, she by the window. As the plane started rolling down the runway, Faith squeezed his hand. "Trust the sky," she whispered. It was something her grandmother used to say. The plane lifted. For a while, everything was smooth, like a story that didn't want to end. But somewhere above the clouds, the wind turned wild. A sharp shake, a metallic groan. The seatbelt light flashed. Flight attendants rushed down the aisle, their smiles stretched too thin. Then came the first drop, like the ground had been snatched away. Gasps, prayers. Evan gripped Faith's hand tighter. She closed her eyes, lips moving like she was speaking to something far beyond him. The captain's voice cracked through the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain." Then static. Another drop. Another scream. Evan's heart raced like a drum. He leaned close to Faith and whispered, "I'm here." She whispered back, "I know." The plane tilted. The lights went out. And then, a roar like the earth was calling them home. When Evan opened his eyes, the world smelled like smoke and wet soil. The sky was bruised with gray, and the forest around him hissed with distant fires. His seatbelt was still strapped, but the chair was broken, half buried in mud. His ears rang like church bells after a storm. Somewhere nearby he heard coughing. He turned. A man, blood on his forehead, tried to crawl toward what was left of the fuselage. Evan unbuckled himself and stumbled. His legs shook. Every step felt like he was walking through thick fog. He shouted Faith's name. Once, twice, over and over. No answer. His throat burned. He searched through twisted metal, torn seats, and scattered bags. He saw people, some alive, some gone. Some crying for mothers, some whispering prayers. The air carried the sound of human fear, raw and animal-like. Then he saw a piece of white fabric caught on a broken wing. His heart stopped. He ran toward it, slipping on mud, cutting his palms on sharp metal. It was her dress, but she wasn't there. Only the fabric. His stomach knotted. He screamed her name again. Night started to fall. The forest grew louder, like it was closing in. He found a small clearing and built a fire using plain debris and dry branches. Others gathered around. A woman with a broken arm. A teenager whose face was streaked with soot. They asked about family, about help, about rescue. Evan only asked, "Has anyone seen Faith?" But no one had. He stared at the flames, his hands trembling. The night sky above looked calm, like nothing had happened. But inside him, a storm was beginning to rise. Morning came slow and heavy. The survivors decided to search in groups. The forest was thick, filled with twisted trees and echoing sounds that made the heart jump. Evan refused to stay back. He tied a torn piece of Faith's dress around his wrist like a promise. They pushed through bushes, calling out names, whistling, hoping someone would answer. The air smelled of burned metal and wet leaves. A few feet ahead, Evan found a suitcase broken open, clothes scattered like fallen leaves. He bent down, touched a familiar scarf. Faith's. He pressed it to his face, breathing in the faint scent of lavender. It was fading, but it was hers. Hours passed. Some people found other survivors trapped. Some found nothing but silence. Evan followed a small stream, hoping it would lead to something. And then he heard it, a faint hum. Not human, not machine, something between. He followed it, heart pounding. The hum turned into a soft song. A lullaby. One Faith used to sing when she was nervous. He ran through the trees and reached a small patch of wreckage. A few bodies. A woman leaning against a tree, too still. Not Faith. He searched the faces. None were hers. He fell to his knees, hit the ground with his fist. "Where are you?" he whispered to the forest. Back at camp, more survivors gathered. Some were injured, some in shock. Food was low. Tension grew. A man argued about leadership. Another woman cried for her child. But Evan sat by the fire, clutching Faith's scarf like it was the only thing keeping him alive. He whispered her name to the flames until the stars came out. By the third day, the forest had turned into a living cage. Helicopters flew overhead once, but the trees were too thick to see them. People shouted, waved fabric, but the helicopters passed like ghosts. Hope thinned like smoke in the wind. Evan couldn't sleep. He kept wandering deeper into the forest, listening for her voice. Sometimes he thought he heard it, soft, distant, calling his name. But it was always the wind. One night, he met a man named Joel. He was older, with eyes that looked like they had seen too much. "You looking for someone?" Joel said. It wasn't a question. Evan nodded. "Her name is Faith." Joel poked at the fire. "Hold on to that name. Names got power in the dark." They started searching together. Joel was quiet, steady. Evan was restless, driven. He wouldn't admit it, but fear sat heavy in his chest. Not fear of dying, but fear of never finding her. On the 5th day, they found a blood trail. It led toward a rocky ridge. Evan's pulse quickened. "She could be there," he said. Joel looked at him carefully. Or something else. But Evan didn't stop. He climbed. The ridge was slippery, stones crumbling under his boots. Halfway up, a piece of fabric fluttered. Her dress again, torn. When he reached the top, he saw footprints, small, barefoot. He touched them, still fresh. He turned to Joel, voice shaking. "She's alive." Joel didn't answer, but his eyes softened. The forest suddenly didn't feel so big anymore. By the end of the week, some survivors began to break. Hunger made them sharp. Fear made them dangerous. A fight broke out near the campfire over a can of beans. Evan barely noticed. His world had narrowed to two things, the footprints and the scarf. He followed the trail every day. Sometimes it disappeared. Sometimes it split. Once it circled back like whoever made it was lost too. He started leaving small signs, stones stacked, branches bent. So Faith could find him if she was alive. One morning, Joel shook him awake. "Evan, come," he said. They found a tree with carvings on the bark. Not random, not animal. Letters. E.V. His name. His knees went weak. She had been here. He pressed his forehead against the tree and whispered, "I'm coming." But the forest had its own secrets. That night, a storm broke. Heavy rain, sharp winds. The fire almost died. Some survivors tried to leave. Others huddled together. Evan sat in the rain, staring at the carvings, refusing to move. Joel dragged him under shelter. "She ain't gone if she wrote your name," he said. And Evan held onto those words like a rope in the dark. The storm didn't just wash away the fire. It washed away their fragile sense of control. By morning, the camp was soaked. Their makeshift tents collapsed, and the food they had stored was floating in muddy water. Some survivors whispered about leaving. Some cried quietly. The forest seemed bigger, meaner. Evan woke up with mud on his face and rainwater dripping down his neck. Joel handed him a piece of soaked bread. "Eat," he said. Evan shook his head. "I'm not hungry." Joel didn't argue. He'd stopped trying to change Evan's mind. He knew that hunger of the heart could swallow hunger of the body. When the rain cleared, they went back to the ridge. The footprints were fading. The storm had smeared them into ghosts. But Evan wasn't ready to give up. He searched every inch, crawling on his hands and knees, looking for any sign. And then he found it, a hair tie, simple, brown, frayed. Faith's. She wore it every day, always twisting it around her fingers when she was nervous. He closed his fist around it like it was gold. But the forest had new dangers now. The storm had knocked down trees, blocked paths, and opened up deep cracks in the ground. While climbing down, Evan's foot slipped. He tumbled and hit his shoulder hard against a rock. Pain shot through his arm like fire. Joel climbed down and pulled him up. "You can't help her if you break yourself," Joel muttered. Evan bit his lip, nodded, and kept going. Back at camp, some people stared at him like he was crazy. "She's gone," a woman said quietly. Evan turned to her, eyes burning. "No, she's alive." The way he said it made her step back. It wasn't hope. It was certainty. And deep in the forest, unseen, a pair of barefoot prints led farther away. The next few days became a rhythm of searching and remembering. As Evan pushed deeper into the woods, he started hearing echoes of faith in everything. The rustle of leaves, the splash of the stream, even the low hum of the wind at night. Sometimes he closed his eyes and imagined her standing just ahead, waiting. One afternoon, Joel followed him silently as they climbed another ridge. At the top, they found a piece of the plane's tail wedged between two trees. The metal was twisted, blackened, but there were marks on it. Words scratched with something sharp. "Still here." Evan's breath caught. "She did this," he whispered. Joel ran his fingers over the letters. "Looks like it," he said softly. But nearby they found something else. A broken piece of rope and a trail of disturbed leaves. Like someone had been dragged. Or chased. Evan's chest tightened. Faith was alive, but she wasn't alone out here. That night he couldn't sleep. Joel sat beside him by the flickering fire. "What if she's scared? Hiding from everyone?" Joel asked. Evan stared into the flames. "Then I'll find her and let her know she's not alone." His voice was low, steady. Far in the forest, an animal howled. It was long, strange, not quite wolf, not quite human. It made the hair on Evan's neck rise. Joel threw another branch on the fire. "This forest ain't empty," he murmured. Evan didn't answer. He was already staring into the darkness, as if Faith was somewhere just beyond it, waiting. On the 10th morning after the crash, things took a turn. A group of 3 survivors decided to split off. "We're heading north," said a tall man named Rick. "We can't stay here waiting. Rescue might never come." His voice carried the kind of desperation that sounded like leadership to some and danger to others. Joel warned him, "The forest don't play fair." But Rick didn't care. He gathered 2 others and left. Before going, he turned to Evan. "You're wasting your time chasing a ghost." Evan didn't reply. He just watched them disappear into the trees. That afternoon, Evan found another sign. An X made of 2 sticks, tied with the same type of hair thread Faith used. It was small, easy to miss, but he noticed. "She's marking her path," he whispered. Joel nodded slowly. "She's trying to be found." Evan followed the trail farther than before. The air grew heavier, the trees denser. The silence wasn't empty, it was listening. He reached a clearing just as the sun dipped low. There, beside a stream, he saw something that made his knees buckle. A small fire pit still warm. And next to it, a torn page from a book. Her handwriting on the corner. Just one word. "Wait." He sat down hard, the world spinning. She was alive. She was close. And she was leaving messages. But for who? Him? Or someone else? Joel placed a hand on his shoulder. "She's fighting," he said. Evan stared at the page. "Then so am I." Evan's mind started drifting backward in the quiet moments. Like the forest was pulling memories out of him. He remembered their first trip together. A bus ride through dusty roads, Faith asleep on his shoulder, her hair smelling like rain. He remembered the way she always said, "The world is full of signs. Evan, you just have to listen." He thought of their last night before the flight. They sat on the rooftop of their small apartment, watching stars. She told him she had a strange dream. A forest, a stream, a fire. "Like something's waiting," she'd said. He'd laughed then. Now it didn't feel funny anymore. As night fell, Joel and Evan returned to camp. They found 2 new injuries. Someone had fallen into a pit in the dark. Fear crept into people's eyes like a shadow they couldn't shake. They started whispering about something in the woods. Some said it was animals. Others said it was someone watching them. Evan didn't care. His world had narrowed to footprints, scarves, carved trees, and fire pits. Every new sign felt like she was whispering, "Keep going." But deep inside, a quiet fear was growing. What if he wasn't the only one following her trail? On the 11th day, Joel noticed something strange. "Someone else been walking her path," he said, pointing to a set of larger footprints overlapping hers. Heavy, booted, not survivor tracks. Evan's stomach twisted. "Who?" Joel didn't answer. They followed the mixed trail until it split. Faith's prints veered toward a stream. The boot tracks curved around, almost circling. Whoever it was, they were tracking her carefully. Evan's heart pounded. He followed Faith's prints while Joel flanked the other side. The forest grew darker, the air colder, like they'd crossed into a different kind of silence. Suddenly, Joel raised a hand. "Listen." In the distance, they heard it. A cough. Weak. Familiar. Evan's body moved before his mind did. He ran through the trees, branches scratching his arms, his boots pounding on wet leaves. He broke into a small clearing. And there she was, Faith, leaning against a tree, barefoot, pale, her white dress now gray with dirt. Her hair hung in tangles. Her eyes widened as she saw him. "Faith," he breathed. She tried to stand but stumbled. He caught her, pulled her close. She smelled like smoke and rain. She whispered something against his chest. Too soft to hear. Joel arrived a moment later, scanning the trees. "We need to move. We ain't alone out here." And for the first time in 11 long days, Evan held her. But the forest around them had gone deadly quiet, like it was waiting. Faith's body was weak, but her eyes held storms. Evan carried her through the trees, her arm looped around his neck, her bare feet scraping against roots and rocks. She whispered his name again and again, like it anchored her to the world. Joel walked ahead, scanning the dark edges of the forest. The silence wasn't empty. It felt like someone was listening. At camp, survivors gathered around them. Some looked relieved, others suspicious. Faith's sudden return stirred the air like wind before rain. Evan laid her near the fire, wrapped her in a dry jacket. She held his hand tightly, as if letting go meant being swallowed by the night. Later, when the others slept, Faith began to talk. Her voice was soft, broken in places. "I wasn't alone," she said. Evan leaned in. "Who?" Her eyes darted to the trees. "Someone followed me after the crash. At first I thought it was help. He gave me water, told me to stay quiet, said he'd take care of me. But something in his eyes wasn't right." Her hands trembled. "When I tried to run, he followed, always behind, sometimes close enough that I could hear him breathe." Evan's jaw tightened. "Did you see his face?" She shook her head slowly. "Only his boots. Heavy, worn, black." Joel's eyes narrowed. "I saw those tracks," he muttered. The fire cracked loudly. Faith flinched. Evan wrapped his arm around her, whispering, "You're safe now." But even as he said it, a part of him knew safety was just a word. Over the next few days, camp life shifted. Faith's return brought hope to some and unease to others. Rick's group hadn't returned. Food was running lower, and someone had started taking things in the night. Small but important things. A lighter, a flashlight, half a can of beans. Joel found boot prints near the edge of camp one morning. The same pattern Faith described. "He's watching," Joel said. Evan's hands clenched into fists. Faith grew stronger, but at night she woke up screaming. She'd sit upright, eyes wide, whispering, "He's here." Evan would hold her, stroke her hair, tell her it was just dreams. But Joel noticed broken branches near their shelter, signs that someone had been moving around while they slept. One night, Evan sat awake, staring into the forest. The moonlight spilled through the trees like pale fingers. He heard it, a soft whistle. Not a bird, a man's whistle. Slow, mocking. His skin crawled. He stood up, heart pounding, scanning the darkness. Nothing moved. The next morning, a survivor named Clara went missing. They found her shoes near the stream. No body, just silence. Faith finally told Evan the whole story. The man had been one of the passengers. He'd sat near the back of the plane. She remembered his face in flashes. Calm during the crash. Almost too calm. He'd helped her out of the wreckage. She'd trusted him. But when night fell, his kindness turned into something else. He talked to her like she belonged to him. When she ran, he didn't shout. He just followed. Patient. Joel listened quietly. He's still out there. Maybe watching all of us now, he said. Tension in camp grew like weeds. People whispered about traitors. Someone accused Evan of hoarding food for Faith. Someone else accused Joel of hiding weapons. Fear twisted everyone's faces. Evan and Faith walked by the stream one evening, trying to breathe away the pressure. Faith touched his hand, whispering, "I thought I'd never see you again." Evan looked at her, eyes burning. "I would have walked through hell." Then they heard a sound. A twig snapping. Evan turned sharply. A shadow moved between the trees, tall, steady. Watching. Evan stepped forward, but Faith pulled him back, whispering, "That's him." The shadow vanished before Joel arrived. That night, the camp's fire burned low. People huddled closer together. Evan sat beside Faith, a knife in his hand, staring into the blackness. Joel made rounds, but the forest felt alive, shifting. Sometime after midnight, Evan heard something soft behind the tents. He crept around quietly, and there he saw it. A man's silhouette standing just beyond the tree-line, as still as a statue. Moonlight caught his boots. Black, heavy, worn. "Hey!" Evan shouted. The figure turned slowly, like he had all the time in the world, then slipped back into the forest without a sound. Evan gave chase, crashing through leaves, heart hammering. But the man moved like smoke. By the time Joel caught up, he was gone. Back at camp, Faith held Evan's face between her hands. "He wants me," she whispered. "He won't stop." Her voice cracked like dry wood. Evan pulled her close. "Then he'll have to go through me." And in the distance, unseen, the whistle returned. Low, slow, promising. By the 15th day, the forest felt tighter. Joel started setting traps. Survivors began sleeping in shifts. Fear spread like fire in dry grass. Evan and Faith grew closer in the storm. They sat by the stream each evening, whispering memories of their old life. It wasn't escape, it was armor. She told him how she used to watch him sketch by the window. He told her how her laughter used to make everything else disappear. Their hands found each other in the dark like roots growing toward water. But even love couldn't push back the danger creeping closer. One morning, they found one of Joel's traps broken. Not by accident. Someone had cut through it cleanly. Near the trap lay a small scrap of cloth, smeared with mud. It was from Clara's jacket. Joel spat into the dirt. "He's hunting," he said. That night, as the wind rose and trees swayed, the camp was plunged into silence. Every creak, every rustle made hearts jump. And somewhere beyond the firelight, a man's voice sang a slow, off-key tune. Not loud, just enough to carry. Faith froze. Her hand found Evan's. The forest held its breath. And for the first time, Evan knew this wasn't just survival anymore. It was war. The storm rolled in like a beast that had been waiting. The sky turned a dark bruise, and the wind clawed at the trees. Evan and the others dragged what was left of their supplies closer to the shelter they had built with bamboo and broken plane seats. Faith wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, her hair whipping like loose ribbons. Evan couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them from beyond the tree line. It wasn't just the storm. It was heavier than that, like danger had taken a seat nearby and was just waiting for the right moment to speak. "Evan," Faith said softly, her eyes fixed on the trees. "Do you hear that?" It was faint at first, like footsteps dragging through wet leaves. Then, a low hum followed, not from the wind, but a human voice. The group froze. Malik grabbed the makeshift spear they'd crafted earlier. The humming grew louder, closer. A figure emerged, thin, soaked, and wild-eyed. His clothes were torn, and his hands were shaking, but there was a smile on his face that didn't match the storm. "My name's Cole," he said, voice steady despite the thunder. "I survived the crash, but I wasn't on the manifest." The words hung in the air like lightning about to strike. Evan stepped forward, heart pounding. "What do you mean you weren't on the manifest?" Cole's smile widened, showing teeth. "Let's just say, I had my ways." The wind howled. Faith reached for Evan's arm. Malik whispered, "Something's wrong with this one." Evan didn't reply, but deep down, he knew. The storm outside wasn't their only problem anymore. That night, nobody truly slept. Cole sat near the fire, staring at the flames without blinking. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his words felt like they carried shadows. He spoke of hearing voices in the forest, of a path only the chosen could walk. Faith avoided his gaze. She leaned close to Evan and whispered, "He scares me." Evan nodded. "He scares me too." The rain poured all night. At some point, Evan opened his eyes to find Cole standing just outside the shelter, staring into the darkness as if listening to something only he could hear. When morning came, something was missing. One of their food packs. Tension cracked through the group like dry wood. Malik accused Cole. Cole just laughed. "Food belongs to whoever can keep it," he said, eyes sharp. Evan pushed forward. "This isn't a game. We survive together or we die alone." Cole leaned in so close Evan could smell the damp on his clothes. "Then maybe some of us should die," he whispered. Faith gasped. Malik lifted his spear. The air thickened. But before anything could happen, a scream echoed through the forest. It was Lara, one of the younger women. They ran toward her voice and found her pointing at a tree. A bloody handprint marked the trunk. Fresh. Evan's stomach dropped. Faith's fingers dug into his arm. Cole just smiled again, slow and eerie. "Told you," he murmured. "The forest talks." That afternoon, Faith disappeared. One moment she was gathering herbs near the creek. The next she was gone. Her shawl lay tangled in the bushes, and there were footprints leading deeper into the forest. Panic spread. Evan's mind raced. "She wouldn't just leave," he said, voice cracking. Cole leaned against a tree, whittling a stick with a sharp stone. "Maybe she found the path," he said, his tone almost playful. Malik grabbed him by the collar. "If you touched her." Cole's grin didn't fade. "Go ahead. Waste your time. But the forest takes what it wants." Evan didn't wait. He plunged into the woods, heart thundering louder than the rain. Branches slapped his face. Mud sucked at his shoes. He followed the prints, whispering her name like a prayer. "Faith! Faith, please!" The forest grew darker, quieter, as if it was holding its breath. Then, in the distance, he heard it. A faint cry. He ran toward it, breath ragged.